On behalf of CG Insurance, I'd like to welcome you to our second webinar of the Parenting Through a Pandemic series, Screen Time, Social Media, and Self-Harm. For those who joined us on our first webinar, it's great to have you again. And for those joining us for the first time, we welcome you. Together with Benedict Associates, we are pleased to have created the series we believe will be a valuable resource for parents, and the benefits will trickle down to your children. It's part of our mission to put people first, and for the past decade, CG Insurance has been expanding its commitment to mental wellness. We recognize that this past year has been more difficult than others, and we are dedicated to providing tools to help support and foster our community's overall wellness. We want to thank the team at Benedict Associates for creating this custom program. We are very fortunate to have this group of experts on island who are able to build these tools for us that we can take home and apply to our families. I don't know about you, but I'm quite excited for this particular series. I'm certainly not unique when it comes to relying on screen time, and will be stepping aside momentarily to join you in the crowd. I'd also like to take a moment to remind you that you're more than welcome to ask questions. You will just need to write them in the comments box, and we will answer them during our Q&A at the end of the program. With that said, should you have any question that pops into your mind, feel free to go ahead and ask, and we'll be sure to address it at the end. With that said, I'd like to introduce you to Benedict and Associates Counseling Psychologist, Dr. Jessica Gordon.
So welcome to webinar 2, Screen Time, Social Media, and Self-Harm. I'm Dr. Jessica Gordon, Chartered Counseling Psychologist, as Christina mentioned. On the agenda today, I'm going to first lay out what the current screen time guidelines are and what they actually mean for your child and the problems that may come from too much screen time. Then I'll look at social media and the pros and cons of social media usage. And the webinar will end with tips on how to talk to your child about their online world and the mental health issues that can arise from social media use. So first off, let me start by saying this is a judgment-free zone. I am a parent too, I get it. I'm not here to tell you that screen time is bad and should be banned forever. No, screens can entertain, they can teach and keep children occupied, but too much use can lead to problems. So it's more about how we can be smart about media usage and set boundaries around it so that we can keep our kids safe. So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry both recommend that with children 18 months and under, screen time should be limited to video chatting only. So that's, FaceTiming a relative overseas, or here in lockdown, it can, family members essentially. Between 18 months and 2 years, screen time should be limited to watching educational programming with the caregiver and interacting with the child while they're watching, to make it a bit more interactive. Alternatives to that, if you do need to use the TV as a bit of a babysitter, would be to put toys in front of them. And you might find that they split their attention between playing with the toy and watching TV, which of course makes it a bit more of an interactive time. For the 2 to 5-year-olds, TV should be limited to non-educational screen time. Non-educational screen time should be limited to about an hour per weekday and 3 hours on a weekend day. 6 and older, encourage healthy habits and limit activities that include screens, so gaming. Healthy habits around screens means using parental controls on the TV to control what your kids may be exposed to, and also not allowing screens while eating or on outings. So no sitting in front of the TV during dinner, or having phones or tablets at the dinner table. It's not only a healthy habit, but it's also respectful. It teaches them that you should engage with the people that you're sitting with rather than keeping your head in the phone. And as your child grows, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work as well. You will need to decide how much media to let your child use each day and what's appropriate for your family. And despite what marketers might say, despite what the ads might say, videos aimed at young kids do not improve their development. Baby Einstein is a good example of this. I don't know, they've been around at least 20 years, maybe a bit longer. They came out and saying that, all their videos were really educational and that could actually increase a child's language development. And of course, there's been a ton of studies done about them, and they've actually found the opposite, that actually it hindered language development. But there is evidence to suggest that shows that are educational that have real people in them, such as Sesame Street and PBS Kids, are better than purely animated shows. So the problem with screens. So children and adolescents spend a lot of time watching screens. So this includes phones, tablets, gaming, TV, and computer. Children aged 8 to 12 in the US spend about 4 to 6 hours a day watching or using screens, and that number increases to around 9 hours a day in teens because of the added use of social media. Parents might not always know what their kids are viewing or how much time exactly they are spending with screens. So back in the day, let's say when we were teenagers, this was really easy to control because there was probably only one desktop computer in the house, and going online meant disconnecting the landline, making it impossible to make or receive phone calls while online. So chances are kids and teens, they had to ask their parents to do this first. They were probably only limited to an hour or so on MSN Messenger or whatever it was. And parents knew what their kids were doing. And the phone line was interrupted, so they were usually, it was a lot more controlled. Nowadays, parents don't always have that level of control. The internet is so fast-paced and constant, and kids and teens can be exposed to inappropriate images or videos that they didn't even seek out or click on. So, children can be exposed to violence, stunts, and unsafe behavior. That happens a lot on YouTube videos, sexual content, negative stereotypes that can be racist, sexist, substance abuse, cyberbullies, and predators. Those are big ones that I will talk about later with social media. And of course, advertising. So too much screen time can make it hard for your child to sleep at night. It can raise the risk of gaining too much weight. Screen time increases your child's risk for obesity because obviously the more time spent sitting and watching a screen is less time being physically active. Also, TV commercials and other screen ads can lead to unhealthy food choices. Most of the time, the food in ads that are aimed at kids are high in sugar, salt, and fat. Children and adults too eat more when they're watching TV, especially if they see an ad for food. And often we can feel hungrier when we eat TV, when we watch TV. Boredom sets in when we watch TV, which of course can mean we eat more. So mood problems come up as well. Depression, anxiety can occur with too much screen time. This can be due to the content of what they're watching, but also who they might be interacting with, in the case of social media, which I will talk about more later. Aggression, that can come from watching violent TV or playing violent video games. Body image issues and negative self-image, particularly in girls, but boys are definitely not immune. Comparing themselves to others they see online through airbrushed and filtered images. Adults can look at an image and know or assume that it's been airbrushed, but teenagers are less able to do this. So they'll often compare their bodies to the images that they see and then feel bad about themselves when they don't live up to that standard. Or they'll watch tutorial videos on YouTube telling them how to get the perfect eyebrows or the perfect bum or the perfect makeup contouring, whatever it might be. And there's a huge following for these videos on YouTube. And so that is a big problem with YouTube nowadays. And of course, less time with family and friends. Obviously, the more time a child spends with their head buried in a screen, the less they're interacting with actual people. So how do we manage screen time? Well, firstly, familiarize yourself with programming to make sure it's age appropriate. Educate yourself on the different social media apps they might be using. Things like that change so quickly. And the more you know about it, the more you'll feel in control. And also the more you'll be able to talk to your kids about it. And when the lines of communication are open, they'll be more willing to tell you about what's been going on these apps because they know that you understand it. Talk to your kids about what they're seeing, point out good behavior, cooperation, friendship, listening and concern for others. So, reciprocal, positive behaviors that are occurring. Again, making the online more like real life. Be aware of how advertising influences choices and talk to your kids about that. And, like if they suddenly want something that they haven't really seen in real life, talk about think about where they may have seen that and why they now want it. Encourage extracurricular activities that don't include screens. So we're really lucky here. The beach is at our fingertips, really good way to spend some family time away from screens. The aquarium is good as well. Lots of things we can do without screens. And of course, the most important, make yourself an example. Model healthy screen time. Your kids, similar to what I said in the last webinar about how your kids will, if you're calm about things, your kids will be calm about things. If you are anxious, they will pick up on your anxiety. Same here. Your kids will follow what you do. So if you're on your phone at the dinner table and constantly seem distracted by the TV or your laptop, they're also going to feel like they can be on their phone or watch TV at the dinner table. So if you want to implement rules around limiting screens, it's a lot easier to do this as a whole family. Because when kids feel like their parents have to follow the rules too, it makes them more willing to cooperate. Actively decide when your child is ready for their own device. Maturity level is key here, and every child is different. And siblings can be different too. Like often what can happen is the rules relax a little bit with the second child. So while the first child had to wait until 15 to get a phone, the second child might get one at 13. And this can cause behavioral and emotional problems, giving a child their own device too soon, and also make it a lot harder for you to control what they do and what they're seeing. Managing screen time. So prioritize unplugged, unstructured playtime. So often we hear that it's okay for kids to be bored. That's totally true. Not every minute of every day needs to be scheduled. It's important for them to have some unstructured time to be imaginative or just to chill, do whatever they want. And ideally this time is without screens. So if they're younger, maybe some time spent coloring or just playing with their toys. If they're older, maybe some time to read, things like that. Another option is to create some tech-free times. So this can be, no phones at the dinner table, like I said earlier, or set a challenge, like one night a week, we don't have any media aside from what's needed to do homework. And of course, what leads me to no media entertainment during homework. So obviously using screens for homework is a lot different than using it for entertainment. Limit exposure to devices an hour before bedtime. That's because the blue light can keep brains wired and therefore make it harder to enter into that relaxed state that's needed to go to sleep. iPhones now have that option to turn off the blue light and it becomes a bit more yellow, but still it really isn't, shouldn't be done in at least an hour before bedtime. And again, no phones in the bedroom at night, depending on the age of your child, but really, even if it's on vibrate, it can wake them up at night. Kids will often say, but I need my alarm to wake me up in the morning. But you can get a good old-fashioned normal alarm clock to do the same thing. And also, if they're at home still, you can offer to say, look, I can make sure that you're awake by a certain time if you would like that. So that can also help. And parents can model this behavior as well and just have a rule where everyone leaves their phones charging in the kitchen overnight. And so that way nobody has their phones in the bedroom, because adults too, like nobody needs to get emails coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning because it's morning in another time zone. So that's just good to get in the habit of doing. Turn off background TV. It's really easy to leave the TV on all day, but it just means that we're mindlessly consuming TV. We also run the risk of young children hearing something they really shouldn't hear in the news or an inappropriate subject on a talk show. And ironically, there's an app to help you stop using your apps and help you overcome your phone addiction. Apps such as Off Time, Break Free, Flipped, or Moment are all available on iOS or Android phones and have various levels of control. So some are more aggressive than others for helping to remind you when you've reached a daily limit. And others they actually block out notifications from Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media it is, so that your child isn't distracted by these while they're trying to work. Because it's really easy to be really focused on work and then get a notification and then instantly go to Instagram to see what's going on. So social media. 90% of teens aged 13 to 17 have used social media. I'm sure not a surprising statistic for most people. 2/3 of teens have their own mobile device. On average, teens are online almost 9 hours a day, not including homework time. Online relationships and social media have become a major part of adolescent life nowadays, and it's totally fine for your teen to be part of these worlds, as long as they understand appropriate behavior. There are many positives of using social media. It's a great way to stay connected with friends and family, local and abroad, and it can enhance creativity by sharing ideas, music, art. However, teens also post photos of themselves online and use their real names on their profiles, which they can reveal personal information, which can make them easy targets if they're not doing it responsibly. The problems with social media. The biggest problem with social media is the reinforcing nature of it. So if anyone has watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, this is exactly what they're talking about. Most of us access social media via our smartphones and tablets. While this makes it really easy and convenient to keep in touch, it also means that social media is always accessible. The round-the-clock hyperconnectivity can trigger impulse control problems. The constant alerts and notifications affect your concentration and focus, disturb your sleep, and make you a slave to your phone. Social media platforms are designed to snatch your attention. They are designed to keep you online and have you repeatedly checking your screen for updates. It's how the company makes money. But much like a gambling compulsion or an addiction to alcohol or drugs, social media can create psychological cravings. And when you receive a like, a share, or a positive comment, positive reaction to a post, it can trigger the release of dopamine in the brain, the same reward chemical that follows, like winning on a slot machine or taking a bite of chocolate. The more you're rewarded, the more time you want to spend on social media, even if it becomes detrimental to other aspects of your life. So the problem with this in teenagers is that their brains are not fully developed yet, and their ability to regulate their emotions is also not fully developed. So adolescents can be extremely impulsive and feel their feelings really strongly. And this, when combined with social media, is not a great combination. And it can really get teens in trouble if they don't think twice before posting. Cyberbullying is another big problem with social media. It's a risk factor for depression, self-harm, and suicide, and it's really common. Well, it's common on all the social media platforms. It's really common on Snapchat because with Snapchat, things disappear and there's then no record of it. So it's impossible for schools to start tackling that, and even parents to tackle that, because it's gone, but it leaves a lasting impression in that person's mind, the person being bullied. Teens can receive threats telling them they're ugly or worthless, or that they should just kill themselves. Some teens are less resilient and really take these kinds of attacks personally. Online predators and physical encounters with the wrong person. These are most likely sexual predators, but they can really be, any predator really friending kids and getting them to trust them and then telling them to do dangerous things. Photos, videos, comments cannot be taken back once posted, even when a teen thinks it's deleted. It is impossible to delete the internet. And that's something that's hard to remember, because kids will think, I've deleted it, it's fine, it's gone. It's not always gone for good. And of course, this can lead to damaged reputations and cause future problems with college admissions, employment, and overall lead to just feeling down, and can cause a real fear in children, teens, that they're missing out on things. Like if they see that something's happening on social media that they weren't invited to, a party that they would have liked to have gone to but were left out of, or it can cause real feelings of loneliness and feeling like they're missing out. What can parents do? Well, the number one most important thing is to just, or the easiest thing is just to apply the same rules to the virtual environment as you do their real environment. It's important to be aware of what your kids do online, but snooping can alienate them and damage the trust you've built together. So the key is to stay involved in a way that makes your kids understand that you respect their privacy, but also want to make sure that they're safe. So talking about what they're doing and seeing online is good. You wouldn't let your child leave the house without knowing where they're going, how long they'll be gone, who they're going to see, and the same should apply online. Also, talking to the parents of your kids' friends can help. Being stronger in number, it can be a lot easier to implement rules around online usage if your child's friends have the same rules. So if parents get together and establish the same rules, then the child doesn't feel left out. Like if one child gets to have his phone in his room at night, but the other one doesn't, or one can stay up late and play video games, but the other one doesn't, it can feel unfair to them. So it can be really, really helpful if everyone gets on the same page. Friending or following your child's social media account. Agree whether you will or won't comment on posts and have passwords. Be aware that sometimes kids have another account. Sometimes they have 2 or 3, and they'll post more freely on one. They will friend you on another, but they'll post more freely on another. So if you do decide to require their passwords, let them know that they will only use it let them know that you will only use it if you're concerned about safety. Chances are knowing that you have it will keep them thinking twice before they interact online. And also let them know that you're not going to use it. You're not going to be snooping. It's just for their protection. Location services turned off, and this is important. A lot of apps do this automatically. A lot of apps just post the location without even realizing. So it's really important to have that location service turned off, because that can lead to getting into trouble in terms of people can show up stalking people. Kids can share too much about, they're going someplace alone, and then it can lead to people finding that person really, really easily. So always have location services turned off. Think twice before hitting share. What they post can be used against them. Follow the "what would grandma say" rule, and teach kids not to share anything on social media that they wouldn't want their parents, teachers, college admission officers, future bosses, and yes, of course, grandma to see. And also encourage them to be nice. Mean behavior is not okay. Make it clear that you expect your kids to treat others with respect and to never post hurtful or embarrassing messages. And also ask them to always tell you about any harassing or bullying messages that others might post about them. Use privacy settings. This is really easy on Instagram. You just click private profile. Facebook makes it a bit trickier, but they do have very good privacy settings. You just have to kind of navigate through that. And of course, limit the amount of people you follow online. If they don't know them, they don't friend them. It's plain and simple. And that way you keep, it's a really simple way of keeping social media a lot safer. So often they'll follow celebrities, but then the celebrity does not need to follow them back, that kind of thing. Mental health and social media. Human beings are social creatures. We need the companionship of others to thrive in life. And the strength of our connections has a huge impact on our mental health and happiness. Being socially connected to others can ease stress, anxiety, and depression, boost self-worth, provide comfort and joy, prevent loneliness, and even add years to our life. On the flip side, lacking strong social connections can pose a serious risk to mental and emotional health. It's important to remember that social media can never be a replacement for real-world human connection. It requires in-person contact with others to trigger the hormones that alleviate stress and make you feel happier, healthier, and more positive. Ironically, for a technology that's designed to bring people closer together, spending too much time engaging with social media can actually make you feel more lonely and isolated and exacerbate mental health problems such as anxiety and depression. Anxiety, both generalized and social anxiety, is common with increased social media usage. Sometimes to teens, their virtual world can mean more than their real world. I once saw an adolescent client who was upset because her friend wouldn't talk to her because she only wished the friend a happy birthday in person, not on Snapchat. It's like it didn't count unless it was on social media. To an adult, this sounds crazy. Like, surely it's more meaningful to wish someone a happy birthday in person than online. But to these girls, it was a very serious issue. So depression can also occur. Depression, loneliness, FOMO, the fear of missing out, negative body image, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts are all kind of connected from a social media point of view. Teens, girls especially, can view glossy filtered images of friends having fun or traveling and feel inadequate in so many ways. Whether it's if they feel too fat or too skinny, they can feel like they never get to go on vacation or feel left out of a social event if everyone else is having fun at a party that they weren't invited to. Kids can feel worthless and worry that their life isn't going the way that it should, or that everyone else is happier than they are. But it's important to help them remember that no one posts their breakups on Instagram. No one posts when they're having a boring weekend because they have a ton of homework. You only get to see a snapshot. You only get to see a snapshot of someone's life, and everybody wants to portray the best parts of their life publicly, not the worst. So self-harm, or non-suicidal self-injury in particular, is growing in prevalence. Self-harm refers to the acts of self-directed violence without suicidal intent and generally serves as a way to cope with distressing, negative, distressing content, basically. It's separate from suicidal behavior. Adolescents and teens who have displayed self-harm behaviors frequently are shown to have contemplated or attempted suicide at times, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will lead to that. And it's not always so obvious. Cutting can be done on the inner thighs, the upper thighs, and stomach so that it's hidden from others. And adolescents aged 15 to 19 have the highest rates of self-harm compared to all other age groups. And it's a lot more prevalent nowadays than it used to be. The vicious cycle of social media, that is basically the more we use it, excessive social media use can create a negative self-perpetuating cycle. So the idea is when you feel lonely, depressed, anxious, or stressed, you use social media. You use social media more often as a way to relieve boredom or feel connected to others. But then using social media more often increases the fears of missing out and feelings of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and isolation. In turn, these feelings negatively affect your mood and worsen symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. And then these worsening symptoms cause you to use social media even more. And so the downward spiral continues. In 2018, a University of Pennsylvania study found that reducing social media to just 30 minutes a day reduced many of these mental health problems. That seems like very little time, considering that most teens are on social media, let's say 9 hours a day. So it's about kind of finding a happy medium between that, a nice balance between too much and nothing at all. So to end, managing your child's use of screens and media will be an ongoing challenge, but by keeping the lines of communication open, developing household rules, and revisiting them as your child grows, you can help ensure a safe and fun experience for all.
Well, that was great. I don't know about you guys, but I've really appreciated and enjoyed all of that. I took a lot away from that. This is the portion of the webinar where we are open to any of your questions. Jessica's here as well, and she's, we now have access to a professional to answer any of the questions that we have. So feel free to go ahead and pop your questions in now. There is one that's already come through. Please, how can we get the recording after the session? We will actually upload this to the CG YouTube channel. So give us some time on that. But if you go check the CG YouTube channel, that will be, this will be available in the upcoming week or so. Is that about right in terms of the turnaround time? But yeah, that's, just go there and you will find it. We have another question here. At what age should my child be able to use social media? Oh, I think we need your, yeah.
That's a really good question. It's difficult really to prescribe a precise age limit because the individual child has to have the social and emotional skills to cope with the demands of social media. And like I said in the presentation, maturity level is key here, and parents know their kids best. So adolescents' brains are wired to be impulsive. Their prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for managing impulses, isn't really developed until early 20s for girls and not till late 20s for boys. And then the individual apps are different as well. So like Facebook, really the minimum age should be 13. And in fact, I think that's the minimum age requirement that Facebook has for their app. But obviously kids can fudge their birth date. But Instagram and Snapchat, really they should be older, maybe around 15 or 16 years, and it should be heavily monitored by parents because of the amount of inappropriate content available. Maybe you have passwords or an understanding that passwords will be required to be handed over if grades start slipping, or if you become worried about them for any reason. Parents should also talk to their kids and help them understand that their sense of worth is not determined by the number of likes or comments they get. Often what might happen is if they don't get a certain number of likes in a certain amount of time, they'll take it down and they'll feel really worthless, especially if it's a selfie or something like that that's very personal. But there's some questions you can ask your kids to determine if they are ready for social media, such as like, do you know what the app is used for? How do you plan to use it? What sorts of things will you post? And if they show a lack of understanding or not really, they don't really give you a good answer, maybe it's a bit vague, then they probably aren't ready. But I also appreciate that this can be really hard to control because once a child has a phone, they can really easily download the app. And day-to-day life gets busy. You're not necessarily checking their phone every day for what apps they might have. And phones are good for safety reasons too. So it is, earlier kids at a younger age now are getting phones for safety reasons. And I think that's a good thing. But to be able to contact our kids or them to contact us if they're in trouble, but it's just, again, how you manage that usage. So, yeah.
Great. Questions come through. That's really great. How should I address cyberbullying? Is it better to confront the child, the children or parents, or inform the school?
Both. It's such a hard topic it's such a hard issue to tackle. And like I said, if it's happening on Snapchat, like where do you even begin? Because there's just no record of that. But the school should be aware, especially if it's happening during the school day, but also to contact the parents. I think everyone, as many people as possible, should be aware that cyberbullying is going on, because the parents will have the most control over that, hopefully. Obviously, the school has some responsibility in it as well, but they're handling 30 plus kids in a class. They can't necessarily zone in on every individual, but parents should definitely be aware so that they can talk to their kids, talk to their kids about it, about why it's not okay to bully somebody, and then maybe put some restrictions and take their phone away if they are the ones that are deemed to be the bully. And if your child's the one being bullied, talk to them exactly about what's being said, how it's making them feel. Again, that their worth is not determined by what somebody says about them on social media, or what goes on social media. Yeah, it's really difficult to tackle cyberbullying though, but I think talking to your kids as much as possible and letting them know that they can come to you with any of this kind of stuff can hopefully help to mediate some of it. And it's difficult now because kids can't get a break from it. If they're being bullied at school, it used to be that they could come home and get a bit of an escape from it at home. But now a lot of that bullying that happens online, there's just no break. In the evening, on the weekends, it can create a lot of anxiety, which of course, like, they're not sleeping because of it, might not be eating, and it's just a spiral. So yeah, I think talking to everybody involved is the best place to start, but also talking to your children and making sure they understand the difference between online and real life as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm going to go into that because I feel like you answered that very well, and also makes me so grateful that I was a child of the 90s. Yeah, the whole nother can of worms and problems that kids have today. The next question, which I guess actually kind of piggybacks on the last question, is what's the best way to monitor my child's online activity or social media use, obviously to even help with the cyberbullying, to help like mitigate it, and for any other like unnecessary activity.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of activity, there are apps that can monitor location, such as Find My Kids. Obviously, it does take an agreement from your children that they will keep their data on and their phones on. But the way I've seen parents navigate it before is that if the teen keeps their phone on so that the parents can check when needed, they won't bother them when they're out, unless they become concerned. But if they shut their phone off or their data off, then the parents will be calling more and checking up on them. For social media, again, you can friend them on all accounts, but agree whether or not you will comment. So some kids don't like to friend their parents because they're worried they'll embarrass them by overly commenting on their posts, so you can have an agreement about whether or not you will do that. Again, be aware of multiple accounts. And like I said, there are apps that can monitor their use. So Google Family Link or Kid Logger, it allows you to monitor what your child does online and censor apps that you don't want your child to use. It allows you to set their screen time, lock their devices, and manage their apps. It's actually crazy. I'd never heard of these apps until doing the research for this webinar. And it's crazy what all these apps can do nowadays. But you can also look at their social media history. So if you go on the app, there's a search tool and you can see the last few things they searched. So obviously it's not perfect, but you can see if they're searching out inappropriate things, or it will also show some people that they follow by when you start searching. So you can see what sorts of things they're following. As your friends, assuming that you are following them or you're friending them, you can just keep viewing their profile frequently. And for the phones, not so much laptops, but there is an app called Web Safety that can monitor the phone's activity, which can be harder to do than on a laptop. So the app on the phone can help you monitor their phone, which can be harder to do than just going on their laptop and searching internet history. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
Yeah. No, it isn't. There really is an app for everything.
All about apps.
Yeah, it really is. Even to get you off your phone.
Yeah.
Just stop checking on your phone, on your kid's phone. Yeah. Okay, this is a really good question. Schools have now been setting homework online, and there's also educational apps that they are social on with classmates for schoolwork. It makes it difficult to limit screen time when they also want to have free time online for more fun things. So the lines are blurred, and I'll hear, this is for homework. How do you suggest handling restricting time in this situation?
Yeah, it is tough. And especially coming out of a pandemic, like everything has been happening online, and it really is difficult. And those lines do get blurred. I would suggest creating some time that is purely without a screen. Maybe you have to leave the house. Maybe you plan a fun activity, going to the beach, or doing something that the child wouldn't even miss the screen, basically. But it's really difficult to, I agree, it's difficult to separate that time, and the lines do get blurred because often, like, especially if homework is needed, like if they're doing a group project or a group presentation, that becomes a social thing as well. And then they also want time. I think a lot of this is also parent intuition. Like, what are you comfortable with? What goes with your values as a family? If if your child can stay up to a certain time, what time of that, after everything else has been done, chores, can be just chill time with the TV or the game, and what is homework time? Again, like I said in the beginning, I'm not saying TV is bad. It can be very relaxing to watch TV or play video games or whatever, but it's about limiting that time, as in, like, they shouldn't be staying up till 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning gaming, which can also which happens. Like, they just seem to lose the concept of time. So yeah, I think it is difficult, especially when you're getting, this is for homework, this is for homework. But you can maybe set an incentive, like, okay, so once your homework's done, we can go out and get ice cream, or we can go out and do this fun activity. And then maybe there's more of an incentive to get offline.
Yeah. I think that answers that question really well. So I just I think so too. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, I just want to leave the Q&A open for just a few more seconds in the case anybody else wants to ask any other questions.
There was another good one that I saw come in. I think it was, if all my kids' friends are always on their phones, how do I get my child to go against the grain?
Yeah.
That's another good question, and really hard. But I think there may be a lot that you cannot control outside of the home, such as what friends are doing, but there is a lot that you can control in your own home by creating the rules and the boundaries around the phone, talking to your kid about why these rules are important. So why is it a good idea not to have your phone at the dinner table? It shows respect. It shows that you're interested and engaged in what the others who are sitting with you might have to say. And it might not feel like it at the time because the kids might not be totally agreeable, or they'll try to push the boundaries, but with consistency, these values will stick with your kids into adulthood. It may feel like they're not listening to you, but it will help them to go against the grain with friends, because it will eventually just feel natural to them. And if you think about it, even with adults, like if you sit at a table and having drinks with a friend and your phone is face up on the table, you're essentially sending the message that you're here, but you're not fully here, because if something comes through on your phone, you're going to check it and then you're going to disengage with whoever you're talking to. So I think having, again, modeling the behavior, but having those strong rules at home will ultimately overpower what the friends are doing, and they will realize what's right and wrong with media usage and phones.
Great. Yeah, and Jessica and I were even talking before we started about how this conversation will be so different in 5 years and 10 years as technology evolves and changes, and these different scenarios and problems will evolve over time. So it's, you know, very topical to now, and yeah, we just have to do the best that we can as parents. Jessica, did you see any other, sorry, Dr. Gordon, did you see any other questions come through?
There was one on screen time. I think it refers more to TV, about does age make a difference when it comes to screen time? So can my 10-year-old have more than my 3-year-old? I'd say yes, because from around the age of 6 and older, kids are capable of gaining more of the educational benefits from screens than toddlers and preschools can. But it's still a time to include hard limits. So yes, a 10-year-old can learn more from screens, but it also means that they will be more sucked into screens than a 3-year-old would be. So your boundaries around screens need to remain firm and consistent. A 3-year-old would most likely get bored by the TV before a 10-year-old would. So age does make a difference when it comes to screen time. But I think that was the last question.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know a few came in on registration, so I'm glad you were able to grab those.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to take a moment not only to thank the whole team at Benedict Associates and Dr. Warden for putting this together, but also the team at CG. You know, a lot of people put a lot of work into making this happen, and we're grateful for everybody's efforts. We also want to remind everybody with the next webinar. So this is a 4-part series. So today was our second webinar. The next one, our third webinar, is going to be on Tuesday, July 13th, the same time, 1 p.m. This one is titled Parents' Mental Health and Returning to the Post-Pandemic World. You know, things have changed and evolved, and we will talk on that. Dr. Gordon is going to get a break on this next one. And Lizel, I don't even know how to say her. Can you help me with her last name?
I actually don't. She is South African.
I'm going to slaughter her last name.
Yeah.
I will murder it, is what I would do. Lizel's going to be here. She's put together a really wonderful program for July 13th. So, and you would just register the same exact way that you registered for this one. You would go to benedict.bm and you click on the CG series, and the registration will be located there. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and close out today's webinar and thank everybody for coming. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.